The rumor hit like a stray splash in a silent gym, a murmur turned megaphone in a heartbeat. The Nuggets coach tossed a jab at the Warriors, a little poke dressed as confidence, a little shade disguised as swagger, and suddenly the Bay felt a familiar electricity crackle through the air, the kind that turns an ordinary day into a rallying cry. Dub Nation doesn't panic when someone talks slick. Dub Nation smiles, stretches, and tapes the wrists, because a provocation is nothing more than a whistle to start the warm-up, a reminder that the gold still glows, and a promise that the next roar from the Chase Center will shake the league ceilings. The talk from the mountains tried to paint the dynasty as a postcard from another era, a framed memory on the wall, but out here the brush is still wet, the canvas still wide, and the palette is still stocked with rhythm, range, and ridiculous finesse. If this was meant to rattle the Bay, it missed, because it only awakened that old, sweet stubbornness, that inner drumbeat that says bring your words, we will bring our movement, bring your noise, we will bring our poise, bring your pride, we will bring our proof. Every time a spotlight swings at the Warriors, a certain point guard turns routine into magic, angles into leverage, and doubt into confetti, gliding off the ball, slicing through screens, and setting tiny detonations that multiply across a possession until the defense breathes smoke. On the wing, a shooter with a heart forged in adversity still hums his quiet song, patient with the rhythm of his feet, exact with the corners of his shoulder, letting the release float like a lighthouse lantern that refuses to blink in the storm. In the middle of the floor, the heartbeat with headband and edge sees the game as a constellation, firing signals, flipping the geometry, scolding a lazy cut, praising a gritty box out, and dragging everyone into the fire where urgency and intelligence are inseparable. So when a visiting coach decides to cosplay as a narrator for the so-called end of an era, the Bay answers with a shrug and a grin, because eras don't end on microphones, eras end on hardwood, and hardwood still speaks the language of screens, cuts, and truth. The mastermind on our sideline will take those comments and fold them into a private playbook, a whisper to a veteran, a nudge to a young gun, a tweak to a timing window, and a new wrinkle in a set that only looks simple until it slices you open. Practice after practice, the Warriors craft that breathless ballet where 5 players move like ink lines on a single page, each motion feeding the next, each option baiting the trap, each pass setting a small hook in a defense too proud to notice it is already off balance. When the doors swing at the Chase, the air tastes like memory and hunger at once, and the crowd tunes itself like a choir, waiting for the first backscreen to hit, the first pocket pass to drop, the first deep shot to land like a thunderclap off the water. They can talk about altitude and bravado on the other end of the map. Out here we talk about pace that bends time, cuts that erase shadows, and spacing that turns crowded paint into open sea, where blue and gold sail lines around a trembling compass. The rumor mill fed those quotes to every phone in the Bay, and within minutes film rooms lit up, coaches muttering about stunts and peels, wings nodding about tags and splits, bigs tapping the board to underline communication with a permanent marker called accountability. Petty sells in the regular grind, but receipts get cashed in spring, and this team loves nothing more than an account balance full of doubt credits that can be redeemed for road silence and scoreboard poetry when the lights are merciless. Transition remains a tide you cannot fence in, and when the rebound pops loose and the outlet fires, defenders hear footsteps that are actually footsteps and ghosts at the same time, because relocation is a dark art and trailing gravity eats space like wildfire. In the half court, the old song still shimmers with new verses, a split cut here, a hammer action there, a ghost screen draped over a backdoor threat, and suddenly the defense is guarding echoes while the ball whispers, now, now, now. Defensively, the Warriors hunt rhythm breakers, those crisp early tags and violent contests that turn confident jumpers into second guesses, those quick digs that snatch dribbles off their plan, that elegant nastiness that leaves shot charts full of cold ink. Rebounding is not a person, rebounding is a promise, a vow that 5 jerseys will treat the glass like a family heirloom, elbows wide, hips low, mouths loud, and when the ball is secured, the arena inhales because the runway is clear and the engines are already whining. Length and timing on the wing let the Warriors erase windows that felt open a moment earlier, hands rising exactly as the shooter breathes, feet sliding to turn shoulders, 1,000 tiny deflections that never make highlights but rewrite endings. Youth brings energy, veterans bring memory, and the blend is the potion, an elixir poured into late winter nights when legs get heavy and attention frays. It is then that the culture snaps the group back like a rubber band, demanding detail and rewarding it with rhythm. What stung about the coach's jab wasn't the volume, it was the presumption, the idea that gold fades because someone says so, as if banners were paper boats that sink at the first rain instead of thick cloth stitched with hours and heat and heartbreak. So the Bay answered the only way the Bay knows, with laughter that sounds like confidence, with work that looks like ritual, with a chip tucked so cleanly on the shoulder it might as well be part of the uniform trim. Gravity is a rumor until it bends your plans, and that is the story of a certain superstar, an orbit you cannot ignore, a decision you cannot delay, a magnet that drags weak-side help out of position and leaves corner pockets plump and irresistible. Off-ball screens hum like factory belts in this system, perfectly timed bumps that look harmless until a defender takes one step in the wrong direction and hears the net behind him applaud a shot he never got close enough to contest. The marksman opposite has a knack for patience that feels like taunting without a word, a simple slide, a shoulder dip, a gaze to the corner that sends a defender one way while the wrist flicks destiny the other. Meanwhile, the heartbeat swivels and points and argues in love, demanding sharper cuts, quicker decisions, and louder talk, barking at teammates the way a lighthouse scolds the fog, reminding everyone that silence is the enemy of defense. The bench will answer with energy and mean intent, a second wave with a first wave mindset, diving on the floor, pressing passing lanes, and turning loose possessions into momentum you can carry in your hands like sparklers. Home night after home night, the chase becomes an amphitheater of anticipation, where a little pump fake at the arc can make an entire section stand, where a back tap off a missed free throw feels like a prophecy fulfilled. This is the people's team, a civic heartbeat with a jump shot, and whenever an outsider questions the living pulse of this group, the Bay circles the wagons, shares a grin, and sharpens the edges of the next performance. Rivalry talk feeds clicks, but inside the building the response is not a clapback. It is a clinic, a decision to turn a microphone skirmish into a chalkboard lesson, patient, merciless, beautifully cruel. Standards are not slogans here. Standards are the way the first drill is executed, the way film is watched with eyes that own mistakes, the way veterans nod without needing speeches, because the work already said what needed saying. The coaching staff will scribble a minor adjustment that becomes a major problem, a subtle pre-switch, a late peel, a counter to a post entry that turns a strength into a puzzle with missing pieces. Media day smirks become court day schemes, and every quip from the mountains is met with an economy of words and an extravagance of precision, because the Bay does not flex in interviews, the Bay flexes in rotations. The point guard's smile stays soft through the noise, but the rhythm of his dribble turns flintier, a little faster into space, a little tighter around screens, a little longer on release because patience is a weapon when everyone is sprinting. Mantra after mantra floats through the locker room like incense, nothing dramatic, just the same reminders that built a decade of memories. Find the extra pass, box with purpose, talk early, trust late. Pressure hates composure, and this group holds composure in its palms like a coin trick, flipping it through fingers while the building throbs, pretending indifference while plotting devastation. Road nights become quiet museums when the Warriors steal the pace, walking through galleries of hostile sound and replacing them with silence that tastes like victory and smells like burnt nets. If the conversation drifts to thin air and high peaks, the Bay will counter with thick skin and deep lungs, with long possessions that make the altitude gasp, with extra passes that make legs question loyalty. Noise control is an art, and the Warriors treat it like a science, taking the crowd out for long stretches by ripping hope from sequences, not by single fireworks but by constant drizzle that ruins the picnic. The target will always be on gold, and that is fine, because gold was not chosen for comfort, gold was chosen for weight, and this team wears weight like jewelry. Mind games are a parlor trick until the ball finds the paint, and that is where the Warriors prefer their statements, in the bump of a chest, the angle of a screen, the beat of a closeout that snatches the arc from a hot hand. Deep shots crackle like lit fuses here, but they are built on the boring bricks of timing and footwork, and that is why they feel inevitable when the screen angles are right and the passes arrive on time. Across the floor, the mountains will rely on size and tempo, on angles that look like advantages until they are flipped, on rhythms that stutter when the Bay inserts a rest note in the middle of a bar. Game plans promise paint touches and glass control, but promise is a soft word against hands that dig like pickpockets and bodies that seal like vault doors, and that is what the Warriors bring when the mood turns mean. Closeouts snap like fresh branches, full of intent, not flying past for show, but chopping steps, chopping air, chopping confidence, daring shooters to keep shooting while testing the bitterness of iron. Late moments turn into memory lanes for this group, where familiarity with pressure becomes a home recipe, measured without cups and spoons, baked until it smells like comfort. Clutch is not a magic word here. Clutch is the echo of daily habits, the residue of film sessions, the muscle memory of help defense arriving on the exact half step that flips a layup into a kick-out the offense did not want. Championship habits are not confetti stories. They are tedious repetitions that create beautiful collisions, boring drills that save dramatic nights, and quiet bargains with yourself that cash out when everyone else is breathing too fast. Turnovers are the dragon the Bay chases away with prayer and practice, and nothing sharpens the mind like a coach's jab on a billboard, a reminder that attention is currency and carelessness is a tax. Shot quality is a religion, and every possession is a hymn, searching for a clean look the way a surfer searches for a clean break, trusting that patience and angles will reveal the open face. The fast break here is less sprint and more sonnet, a rhythm that changes speeds, a lane that widens with one clever decoy, a finish that feels like punctuation you could frame above a fireplace. The half-court attack is needlework, tight threading through tight windows, stitching together cuts and screens until the seam runs perfectly along the fabric of a defense that only looks intact. Resilience is not a catchphrase, it is an identity, and every slight stitch to it becomes another panel in a banner quilt, another story the crowd tells itself when the ball needs a home. A coach can feed the media for a day, but the Warriors like to feed the film, and the film never lies, the film never backtracks, the film never gets tired of telling you exactly how you were carved. Every quote becomes a note in a symphony of discipline, every quip a metronome tick that keeps practice honest, keeps hands busy, keeps feet ready to slide and plant and rise. Fuel tastes like disrespect out here, and the engine that runs on it loves long drives, loves cold gyms, loves the sound of shrugs turning into storms. The water around the city knows how to clap, and when the nets crack at the arc, the sound bounces like tides against glass and steel, echoing into the legs of the visiting bench. Pride wears blue and gold like skin, not costume, and when it is threatened by second-hand swagger, it does not shout back, it sharpens back, impossible to hear until it is impossible to stop. The motto that built this era still breathes in the huddles, a reminder that stars shine brighter when the constellation stays connected, that trust is the final pass to an open truth. Another cloth might find its way to the rafters someday, and if it does, it will not be because of what anyone else said, but because of what the Warriors kept saying to themselves when the gym was empty. The coach from the mountains can own the microphone, but the Bay will own the memory if the work stays honest, if the counters stay sharp, if the edges stay hungry. Golden threads tighten when pulled, and this jab tugged the weave, only to find it more connected than it looked, more stubborn than it sounded, more alive than it was given credit for. There is poetry still in these hardwood nights, and the Warriors prefer to recite with screens and cuts, with offense that feels like jazz and defense that feels like a verdict. The conference is a gauntlet, yes, but gauntlets are for knights, and this franchise walks through them with scuffed armor and shining eyes, loving every clang of steel. Doubt is delicious seasoning in the Bay, sprinkled over practice, sprinkled over travel days, sprinkled over ankles and shoulders and wrists until the whole meal tastes like vengeance. Warm-ups bring those smiles that look like secrets, soft and small until the ball goes up and the secrets spill across the floor like light through a cracked door. Focus becomes a stare that does not blink, that sees matchups as math and moments as music, choosing the right note, the right step, the right space. Crowds rise and fall like a living sea, and the Warriors surf that energy better than any crew in the sport, riding noise when they need it and quieting it when it belongs to someone else. Composure is jewelry here, worn lightly but always visible, a chain that lies cool on the collarbone of the team no matter how hot the air gets. Picture a closing stretch, the ball in the hands of the Oracle, screens peeling like petals, defenders bumping into a choreography they do not know the steps to, while the clock breathes in tiny gasps. Then the slip, the kick, the catch, the breath, and the stroke that stops cameras and steals oxygen, landing so softly it sounds like a secret only the net was supposed to hear. After the final horn, the press room will ask about the words from the mountains, and the Bay will answer with a shrug, because the real statement has already been written in sweat and footwork. The message to the league will be the same as it ever was. We hear everything, we fear nothing, we remember what matters, and we translate pride into possessions. Dub Nation will walk out under city lights that look like glitter spilled by the heavens, trading highlights on sidewalks and carving grins into the night. The schedule will circle the next meeting in invisible ink, not for revenge, but for reinforcement, not for noise, but for narrative, not for conversation, but for conclusion. In the end, the provocation was just a spark, and the Bay knows what to do with sparks, building bonfires that call neighbors, that warm hearts, that light paths. So let the mountains echo whatever they want. Out here, the ocean answers with a rhythm that never sleeps, a tide that keeps coming, a wave that keeps rising. And when that next tip drops into the air, the Warriors will not promise, they will perform, trading talk for touch, trading jabs for jazz, trading headlines for history written in motion. Before we dive into the next update, help us keep the Warriors' spirit alive by subscribing to the channel and smashing that like button. Stay connected with all the latest Golden State Warriors news. Now, let's get into it.